All right, welcome everybody. We are live, and I'm joined by my good friend Kai. And of course, it is that season. Christ is risen. Hopefully, everybody is celebrating. It is a celebratory time, and hopefully, you had a good Pascha. Kai, how you been, dude?
Pretty good, Jay. Glory to God. Things have been well. Some things in my personal life have changed, as you know. Right there.
Congratulations.
Thanks so much. Yeah, so that's probably why you guys haven't seen me as active as I used to be. Just basically adjusting to a new way of life, other priorities, but slowly as things are kind of stabilizing in that regard,
I
making my
drink
return.
Pellegrino to your marriage.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you. Very nice. Yeah, no, things have been well. Just getting back into the apologetic scene now. Um, gonna start up definitely those series that you, David, and I did with regards to the Orientals and the Nestorians. That was just kind of temporarily put on hold. We're definitely going to be coming back to those. We are nowhere near done that series. I know people are asking for more content. Be patient. We will definitely be delivering more content in the near future. Then we're still looking to do, Lewis and myself and Orthodox Shahada, more stuff on Islam, and just in general more collabs with the Orthodox online. Yeah, things have been good.
Perfect. So today we're going to talk about something that is kind of adjacent to our Orientals a lecture series that we've been doing. And it's not formally part of the series, but it does relate to it because we want to give our assessment of the idea of apostolic Christianity that is somehow spread across the groups that believe in apostolic succession. And this form of ecumenism needs to be addressed. And of course, it deals with, as probably many of you know, Sam Shamoun himself and others in his circle. So Kai also has an experience that he's had with Sam that he wants to get into, and then maybe we'll get into the ecumenist elements of this sort of failed ecclesiology. Do you want to start with your experience with Sam?
Sure, I can definitely go into that. Yeah, so the stream is going to be a little bit of mix of Sam directly, my experiences with Sam, what I know about Sam and him personally, and then also just the topic of ecumenism proper, where we find problems with it and how you can see Sam basically trying to promote the idea of ecumenism and why this is quite dangerous. So my relationship with Sam stretches back a few years. I don't really know exactly, what is it, 3 years, 4 years, don't know, wasn't really counting. But at some point, Sam was in contact with a lot of the Orthodox in the circle that I was in, with like UJ, with Lewis and some other people, and was having an influence on unorthodox, a lot of other denominations as well, quote unquote denominations. And he came out and basically said that he became a member of the Assyrian Church of the East, which is obviously Nestorian. A lot of people will say, no, it's not Nestorian and stuff. We have our whole talk of why the Church of the East is Nestorian. But nevertheless, at that time, I called Sam out on this. Um, I didn't really have an all too good relationship with Sam at the time. There may have been some interactions here and there, but there were not really any good substantive relations. And I just wanted to call him out given the influence that he has on his platform. And he didn't take well to that. He just took it as a personal attack. He bashed me. You can go on the streams and see in the history there where he basically took a very combative approach. And people, many people had approached me, and they, who knew Sam, who have been friends with Sam, or friends, or just friendly, or have known him for quite some time, and they were counseling me, saying, this is not the way to get through to Sam. You have to take a different approach with him. You cannot be direct and combative. You need to really be kind, loving, patient, and you just need to basically foster an atmosphere of dialogue with him if you want to get through to him. And so taking the counsel of people, I backtracked my aggressiveness with regards to calling him out and attempted to make amends with him and to basically treat him in a kind way, teach him orthodoxy proper, make him see the errors of the Church of the East and the theology. And at that point, I was convinced that he didn't really understand the theology proper. He didn't really know what he was getting into, that his joining the Church of the East was really something that was emotional. It was not knowledge, because there's no way that you can say certain things that Sam was saying in terms of what he holds to certain aspects of Christology, even though he does have errors in his tridology and Christology, there are certain things that he says that are correct. And those things, if he's holding to that and believes in that, it's irreconcilable with the Church of the East's position. We're not saying the same thing. And so I knew right away that he was not intellectually adept to be able to see these things. And so I wanted to teach him, I wanted to coach him and instruct him to basically understand what he was getting into. And so Sam and I, we developed a very close relationship behind the scenes. We would talk quite a bit privately. I would join a lot of times his streams, contribute to his streams, the teachings that people were hearing from him. I was always presenting the Orthodox position. So whatever Sam was talking about, I would chime in and say, this is what the Orthodox believe, or I can affirm, yes, Sam is correct. This is patristic. Like, he's not erroneous on everything. So I want people to know that there is a lot of good that comes from him. He does speak a lot of truthful things, but it's that 1% of poison that is enough to poison the entire well. And so that's kind of where we're at right now, where it's reached a point where, with my interactions with Sam over 2-3 years, this person is not interested in learning. Despite what he said, the benefit of the doubt that we gave him, that he's on this journey, he's going to find the church that speaks most truthfully to him, and that he really wants to know the issues, he really wants to go down into the issues. That's a lie. He absolutely is not willing to take the time to actually learn. What he is doing is he has preconceived notions, and he's just sifting through what people are telling him and what he comes across in some of the stuff that he's reading that affirms him. So he's basically looking like for a confirmation bias for the position that he wants to actually hold to. He's not interested in learning about orthodoxy. He doesn't care about being catechized or instructed. And that's one of the big problems with Sam is, in order to enter the Orthodox Church, you have to be catechized. You have to be receptive to being told you are wrong.
It's a reboot. You got to reboot and start over.
Yeah, exactly. It is a reboot. It is not just changing a few things that you kind of brought on as baggage. This is a complete destruction of your existing worldview, and you have to build a new foundation and start from scratch. And Sam is not the type of person who will take well to that. He has been for a very long time teaching people, and he is not willing to become the student. As much as you may think he says he wants to be the student, that he wants to learn, no, he wants to teach. And if you do not go along with what he is teaching you, you will get the stick. He will start pounding on you.
What? Yeah. Before you say that, I would add, just to throw in, that it was a very similar move in terms of his argumentation, and I was in the background there as well. You were first doing a lot more work with Sam maybe 3 or 4 years ago than I was, and I remember then it was, well, Assyrian Church of the East, it's all good, we're all cool because, you know, that's my background, that's what I feel is right for me, it's my heritage, it's this, it's that. Bad reasons. And then when it's, well, I go to the Catholic Church now because they'll give me communion and a bunch of mystical things happen, and I met cool people that had to be God's miraculous Catholic providence. So there's a bad reasons is the point I'm getting at. In both cases, it was bad reasons. And he would even say at times, well, I'm not going to go to the Orthodox Church because they're not going to give me communion. In other words, I have to start over and be catechized.
That's right, exactly. And he has pointed that out. He's like, the Orthodox are very strict; they will not give him communion. So he knows about that, and he's, I think, the kind of person. He has a kind of temperament that he doesn't want to wait. He's not patient. He doesn't want to go through the hoops. He just wants something that is going to satisfy his inquiry right now, and he's finding that in Roman Catholicism. So it's definitely not an intellectual way of looking at things. But one of the things that when he was going into the Church of the East was he left Protestantism. And even early in those times, he was starting to kind of talk about this apostolic Christianity type thing, where he's recognizing apostolic churches. He's saying that the fullness of the truth can be found in the apostolic churches, in the apostolic tradition. And he names them explicitly as Roman Catholicism, Orthodoxy, the Orientals, and the Church of the East. These are all the ancient churches. And the way he likes to frame it, and I think this is a very, very terrible way to frame it, and I disagree with it completely, is the analogy he gives is if you think of like a dollar bill, so some of these churches have more fullness of that dollar. So let's say if Orthodoxy has $1 worth, Roman Catholicism might have 90 cents worth of the dollar, the Orientals might have 70, and the Church of the East might have 50 or something like that. So it's like you have these bits of truths in all of them, but they're all kind of making up the same currency. And so they're all valid. It's just really which one of these is going to give you the most fullness of that truth that you're seeking, and that will satisfy your personal journey. So, for example, if the 50% that you can find in the Church of the East is sufficient for you because that 50% meets your standards and you're happy as a layperson to stay at that level, then go to the Syrian Church of the East. If you're a little bit more intellectual, you need a little bit more depth, okay, maybe go to the Orientals or go to the Roman Catholics. That'll satisfy your inquiry because these are all valid churches. It's just really more of where you're personally comfortable. And if you want like the absolute truth, go to the Orthodox Church. I mean, it's kind of ironic that he seems to treat the Orthodox Church as having the most fullness of the faith, but yet he's reluctant to come to Orthodoxy. But nevertheless, that analogy, that's the way he's been presenting his conception of apostolic Christianity and the apostolic churches. Now, during this time that I'm with Sam over the course of 2-3 years, I'm biting my tongue a lot of the times. I'm restraining myself because as people counsel me over and over again, be patient with Sam, be patient with Sam, teach him. And that's what I tried to do. I would give him sources to read. I would try to engage him in dialogue. I would try to explain things to him. A lot of times we would just have personal Skype calls. Sometimes they would just be direct messages. I would send him a list. Hey, if you want to understand these, look at the list of this stuff, read it.
Yeah, I did the same thing. I sent many links, many, recommendations, many, clips, many, copy paste snippets. I don't think any of those ever set in.
No, they never set in. And it was just basically the making absolute no headway with him. And then it culminated now your experiences with him and just having my absence away from the apologetic scene for a while, and then that whole mix up with the streams that we were doing for the Orientals series, which I initially was going to do that on Sam's channel.
Right.
And Sam just kept delaying it. And I have the messages to prove it. He admits to being at fault for delaying the appearance of those streams. I was ready when I had initially said the time frame that I wanted to come on. He delayed it. And he was giving very dumb reasons. The guy can go and do streams for 3 hours every single night, and he's giving me dumb reasons for not doing the stream with regards to the Orientals. Obviously, he did not want me to come there and start basically starting a war with all these other apostolic churches that he's trying to promote, because this is now just basically him being a conduit for presenting theology that is in contradiction to what he wants to espouse. And so it just reached that point where it's like, okay, it's clear he doesn't want to delve into this issue and he's not serious about it. So I approached you, Jay, and I said, Jay, let's do it on your channel. And I'm glad that we did that, because it led us to just do it on our time frame with you, me, and David. We're unrestrained. We can freely speak what we want to say with regards to ecumenism. We're not going to hold back. We're not going to have any concerns that we're going to insult the audience because, oh, they're Roman Catholic or so. It's like, if you get insulted, that's your problem. We're going to speak the truth. And if you're insulted by the truth, that's on you. That's not on us. And so that's where we started. And that's basically where my break came with Sam. And when we started our streams, I kind of made some comments with regards to the Orientals, who I don't really look too favorably upon. These people are very vicious. They attack Orthodox constantly.
And they will team up with anyone Protestant or Catholic to do that.
Yeah, absolutely. The Orientals, they hate Orthodox more than they hate Muslims. And this is, if you interact with them to any extended period of time, you will see this. The Orientals hate Orthodox. Like, this is a hate. This is not a dislike. This is an absolute hate. And they really love Muslims more than they love us. And it's sad that that is the state of affairs. But basically, I made my own remarks with regards to them that is fairly stern. And Sam jumped on this, and he just made me out to be the devil, and look at the way Kai is talking and this and that and whatever. At this point, I don't really care. My relationship with Sam is more or less now non-existent, because I see it's a futile effort. And so you have the incident with you then blowing up, and then Sam coming after you because what, you challenged him to a debate? Like, this is ridiculous. It's like,
well, let's be clear. So you I don't think you knew this, but already in the background, we had for many weeks and maybe even a few months been discussing the possibility of doing some sort of roundtable discussion.
Yeah.
Originally, that was going to be on Sam's channel, and the idea was to have me, a couple other people, you, Lewis, Ubi, whoever was willing to come on, and then it would be on the other side, Albrecht, Yossi, and whoever else. And it sounded good at first, and then it kind of got postponed. The first it was, oh, Albrecht can't do it. Then it was Yossi can't do it. He's got kids or family or something. And then Ubi can't do it. I'm not making excuses. I'm just saying, like, Ubi wasn't able to because he had to do the Ibarra debate, but the Ibarra debate got postponed. Then everybody said, well, it needs to be after, December, maybe into January. So everybody legitimately had a bunch of stuff going on. It wasn't people trying to get out of it. But then eventually, Ubi's own personal interactions with Albrecht, he had a really hard time trying to get Albrecht to do anything, nailing him down on any dates or anything. And then Ubi finally told me, I'm not going on your panel because I don't care about Sam, and I'm not interested in interactions with Albrecht because he just always postpones it and never gives you a set date, and he always whines and bitches about the terms of the debate. So Ubi was just like, I'm not interested. So that left me like kind of looking for the possibility of other people. That didn't look like that was ever going to happen. And so Sam was doing a discussion about Protestant views of the Trinity and who was the best amongst the Protestants. And I was messaging Sam at the time, and I just said something like, well, I'm not really a big fan of any of the Protestant models of the Trinity. So I said, why don't you and Albrecht come on my channel and we'll finally have this discussion. And I said, it was very polite, just a simple DM. We can do it even with timed responses. That way nobody talks over anyone. Nobody gets mad. It's, you talk for 5 minutes. I talk for 5 minutes. You talk for 10 minutes, that way it works. Then that was just it. He just blew up. So.
Yeah, and the rest is history. It's all archived now. So yeah, I mean, I just saw this as an opportunity that to come out and actually confront Sam, because he's unhinged at this point. Now he's pushing heretical stuff. He's going after you. He's just talking the most nonsensical garbage, a lot of vilification, and it's like, well, fellow apologist, I'm going to come to your side. And let me just take this as an opportunity then. That time when I had called Sam out before, when he first joined the Church of the East, I did frame it as, let's have a debate, Sam. You think you're confident that you know about the Church of the East and you're going to be able to defend your position? All right, let's do a debate. And he went on his tirade and everything. And then this is where I changed course, not because of his tirade, but just because of the people who were counseling me show him a little bit of leniency. Well, that leniency is over, Sam. I'm issuing you a formal debate challenge on your ecumenism and your Church of the East theology. All right, let's pick up where we started from before, and let's see how well you do now, tough guy. All right, you've had 2 years, 3 years to learn your theology. You had that time to go and research and become educated. All right, now let's put that to the test. Formal challenge to you, Sam. Let's do it. Formal debate.
Now, there's another reason too that we need to discuss this, because a lot of people asked a couple weeks ago, why are you and Kai talking about the Church of the East theology? What does that have to do with them being Catholic apologists, so-called? Well, you have to understand that Albrecht himself has contradicted by, in the past, saying that he wants to come on and defend the Assyrian Church of the East as not having Nestorian theology, and then more recently contradicted that by saying, why would I defend the Church of the East? I'm a Roman Catholic. So Albrecht himself has contradicted, and it's precisely due to the train of events that Kai is talking about, where Shamoun has done the exact same type of flip-flopping of saying that, well, I'm Assyrian Church of the East, but I'm also a Roman Catholic because they're all apostolic churches. And so I appreciate you offering that debate challenge. I don't think any of these people are ever going to take up any serious debate.
They're not going to take it seriously. And Sam, he's the type of person, he's going to hide behind Albrecht. I have no interest to engage with Albrecht. If he wants to debate me on Church of the East, I'll issue the challenge directly to you as well, Albrecht. If you think the Church of the East has correct theology, like you are on record saying, you have called us, to use your term, morons. You called us morons for not thinking that the Church of the East theology is correct. So if you hold to that persuasion, here's the direct challenge to you as well, Albrecht. Let's debate. Formal debate. Let's do it. But I have history with Sam. I have history with him directly on these issues. And so Sam doesn't have excuses to go and run behind Albrecht. I can do a separate debate with Albrecht, but I'm calling you out, Sam. You need to know what you're talking about, not going and running like a little sissy hiding behind people. All right. If you want to join a church, if you want to proclaim that it's apostolic, if you want to say that its theology is correct, all right, let's demonstrate it. Demonstrate to the whole world how ignorant you actually are, how unknowledgeable you actually are with regards to its Christology and its synods. And let's see how well you can actually read the Syriac documents to know what that church teaches and what they say in English and what they actually write, and they won't tell you in English. Let's have that debate, Sam. Please come.
Now, on top of that, there's a lot of ways that I'd like to critique this position, because first of all, keep in mind, Sam was Calvinist Protestant for many, many years, and then suddenly decided that, okay, I'm beginning to doubt that. We had a pretty heated debate in about maybe 2020, 2021 in the Discord. Father Deacon Ananias was there. Maybe Kai was even there. And I'm bringing that up because Shamoun mentioned this a few weeks ago in one of his streams, that he had muzzled me in this debate. But the funny part about it is that debate was actually about the canon of Scripture and the Deuterocanon. And Sam now believes the position that I was arguing in that debate. And now he's saying that, no, I won that debate. You lost it. And you don't want to talk about that. No, I'm happy to talk about it because you now hold the position that I was arguing 4 or 5 years ago. So that's not true, first of all. Beyond that, Sam didn't get catechized, didn't learn patristic theology, didn't learn any of the monarchical Trinitarian doctrines, even though he praised Dr. Bo Branson for the last 4 or 5 years. He didn't really go and pay attention to what was being said because the thing that I mentioned in the DMs that really set him off after the first debate discussion was, I said, you can't really have a consistent Trinitarian doctrine of, monarchical, role of the Father as the monoarche without the doctrine of the energies. The energies goes along with this. It's not a piecemeal pick and choose. It's a whole package deal. And that also set him off because he apparently thinks that the energies are some stupid made up thing. And I clipped him. He was blasphemously, oh, why don't you go get more of your energies? Maybe they're going to help you out in your debate. As if the divine energies are not a New Testament doctrine taught very clearly in Paul's usage of the word energeia. So the point is that Shamoun did not get catechized, did not listen, did not care about any of this. You can even see it in his recent misuse of Palamos against the Muslims. If you go and read the whole discourse, I read the majority of it. Palamos actually argues that Muslims do not have the Trinity. He does a reductio argument where he says that even your Quran ascribes a contradictory position of Jesus being divine, and in another place, the Logos, the Word of Allah, and then in other places he's not. And that's the point. It's not saying that you have the faith of Christ, therefore let's have an ecumenist, nostra aetate, common natural theology position. No, that's not what Palamos is saying. And so his quote mines and his clipping, again, demonstrate no interest in actually understanding what the Cappadocians or what St. Gregory of Palamas actually teaches. As it's just so silly. He's imprisoned by the Muslims when this is happening, and he's debating with the Muslims while he's imprisoned by them. Of course, he's not going to say, we all believe in the same God. Even in the very passage that was quoted, he says, you proclaim in your Quran my position. That's pointing out an inconsistency. He's not saying that you believe in the Trinity and the deity of Christ. It's so stupid, right, to have this ridiculous position. But the point is that it's not about what's correct or the right reading or reading comprehension. It's just ammo for causing a big fuss and getting people upset and confusing people. And so Sam didn't get catechized, and since he didn't get catechized, and since he's not under any authority or episcopal blessing, this is another point. You cannot be, even in the Roman Catholic system, you got to pick a rite. You can't be a Syrian Church of the East and go to the Latin Mass or the Novus Ordo Mass. In the Roman Catholic Church, you have to get permission to leave the Latin rite and go to the Eastern rite. You can't do a both and do whatever you want. So it doesn't even make sense on his own terms. And who knows if he even does? Nobody even knows. Does he even go? Who knows if he even goes? I mean, there's just no way to know. And that's why there's no episcopal oversight. There is no authority that has said Sam Shamoun speaks for the Roman Catholic Church or the Assyrian Church of the East or whatever. And that, I think, is another point that's overlooked, is that this is a dude that's just sort of like creating, like Christian Prince, a sort of an online religious cult. So when he says apostolic churches, my first critique, and then I'll let you offer your critiques, is, first of all, what does that mean? Does that mean Anglicans? Because on what basis do you just arbitrarily say that it's all the, quote, ancient churches, but not the Anglican Church? Now, I don't believe it's the Anglican Church, but I mean, the point is that it's an arbitrary standard of, well, it's these because they're, quote, ancient. Well, an Anglican will say that his church, the Church of England, is ancient. So to call it ancient and to call it apostolic is ambiguous in itself. It requires more than that. Furthermore, these communions historically have excommunicated each other. How can they all be the same communion? Excommunicating, yes. Right? Not in communion. You are not our church. And in fact, there are anathemas, as we'll talk about the Fifth Council and the Edict of Justinian, right? There, you have to reject these things. And so it's an impossible position. Thus, either there is one true church or there is not. There are two options here. You can't have a 50% true church, a 30% true church, a 20% true church. But it is correct that Sam's position lines up with Vatican II's view of ecclesiology and the church, because remember, Vatican II says the Catholic Church subsists in the Roman Catholic Church, but also exists outside of that bounds of the Roman Catholic Church. Thus, you can have the concentric circles model of Peter in the center, the Roman Church as its main 100% church, the Orthodox Church with 80% of the apostolic faith. Then outside of that, you have the Orientals and Anglicans with, 70, 50%. Then you have Lutherans and whoever else, right? And then outside that, you have the Protestant evangelicals. And then outside that, you have Muslims who have maybe 20%, 30%. That's the tier concentric circles model of we're all in partial communion. Where is partial communion in the canons of the church, in the first 1,000 years of the church? Where is this idea? There is no idea that the one true church exists amongst 5 different sects or groups, or 4 sects or groups, any more than it exists amongst 3,000 or 30,000. So just because you boil it down to an arbitrary decision of merely the churches that profess to have apostolic succession, that doesn't prove that that's the true church. On what basis is it just the ones that profess to have it? Especially when the Assyrian Church of the East and the Oriental Coptics, etc., they don't agree with each other. Mm-hmm. So how could they all be the same church? It's stupid. It's a stupid position. And nobody has ever argued for an apostolic Christianity that is the, quote, ancient churches, that is just those 4 or 5 C's. Unless you want to talk about branch theory, but Anglican branch theory includes the Anglicans. So it doesn't make any sense. So either it's one true church that is a visible canonical unity, or it's not. It can't be a middle position.
That's good, Jay. I'm more or less on the same page as you. I'm just going to unpack it a little bit differently. I'm just going to take a little bit of a different angle, but it's basically the same point that you're making. So I'm going to start with first just simply trying to identify what is at the heart of ecumenism. Okay. And that's going to then lead me into discussing apostolicity. So
let me make one last statement before you go into that, because it reminded me of my last note here. The only other thing I would add is that it is definitely true that outside of the Orthodox Church, you do have degrees of agreement or disagreement, right? So I'm not saying that there's absolutely no difference between a Muslim and a Coptic person or something like that. No, obviously those churches have a lot more in agreement with us. But the attitude of the patristic church, the mindset, the phronema of the church, is that it only takes one error, heresy, or schism to remove you from the body.
Yes.
And that's all it takes. That's why the faith has to be whole, entire, and complete. You can't have a 90% church, a 50% church. It just doesn't make any sense. It doesn't mean all the members know all the doctrines perfectly or have a PhD. It just simply is necessarily the case for the unity of the body, that it cannot be split, it cannot be spread amongst sects, and one heresy or schism is all it takes to remove a person.
Yep. All right, am I good to go? All right. So a lot of people will approach ecumenism trying to understand what is at the heart of ecumenism, and they will see it as the coming together of various denominations in some kind of harmonious union or whatever it may be, just simply a coming together of groups that differ. And they focus on that aspect and just say, oh, this is ecumenist. It is ecumenist, but it's not really, in my opinion, ecumenism proper. What is at the heart of ecumenism is the conviction that no one single party exclusively has the truth in its entirety. If you're an ecumenist and you're part of that ecumenist movement, that's basically what your conviction is that you don't have one single identifiable party that exclusively has the truth in its entirety. So the different groups have bits and pieces of the truth, and that we must all come together on the grounds that unite us in commonality while ignoring the differences. Okay, so that is the whole reason why the ecumenist movement exists and why people want to be ecumenical, is because they don't believe that there is the truth in this one church. There's just the truth scattered everywhere, and we're just going to come together with what unites us, and we're going to ignore the differences as if the differences are not relevant. Okay, that way of thinking is demonic. It is completely against the patristics, and it is completely against the ecumenical councils and the way the church has functioned since its inception. As Jay has said rightly, if you are excommunicated, that means you are not in communion. And if you're not in communion, you are not a church. Now, I'm going to get to that when I talk about apostolicity. So now you have to ask yourself the question, well, if you as an ecumenist can actually identify that this one church does actually have the fullness of the truth, then does it make sense for me to go elsewhere? Why would you not go to the place that you believe has the fullness of the truth? Why would you go to somewhere that teaches error and proclaims heresies? All right. So it makes absolutely no sense for me to want falsities in my worship when I know the truth exists over here. So the point here is I don't have to cede any ground just to not hurt your feelings or upset you. I care about the truth. I know that the truth exists here. I don't care about your feelings insofar as they compromise the truth. And that's the stand against ecumenism. The stand against ecumenism is this. It's like, you guys are getting upset because your feelings are getting hurt that we're rejecting you. Well, we're rejecting you because you're rejecting the truth. Okay, you need to accept the truth. We're not going to compromise it, and we're not going to cater and placate your feelings because, oh, we're afraid to speak the truth. No, we're going to tell you where the truth is, why it's the truth, and this is where you need to be, because this is the church that Christ himself established. And if you want to cut yourself off from that, then that is an action on your part. You are removing yourself from the church. I don't have to be accommodating to you because you don't want your feelings hurt. No, if you don't want your feelings hurt, then learn where the truth is and come aboard. Okay? So Christ did not go around telling you to go and proclaim the church that you believe is in your head. He said, follow the church that I'm establishing here with the apostles. So that's what you have to do. Which then leads us into, well, what is apostolicity? And one thing that I want to stress is that it is not restricted to just material succession.
Yes. In other words, the faith. Yeah. Like, you got to have the faith too. It's not just...
You have to have the faith. So Sam is basically reducing his apostolic Christianity to really just be those ancient churches that have material succession. And just let's completely ignore what exactly the details are of their theology and the fact that they've been excommunicated. That doesn't matter. It's just that, is there some kind of material succession? Oh, they're apostolic. Well, material succession is necessary, but it's not the sole grounds that determines apostolicity. You have to preserve the faith. That is a key marker for apostolicity, just as much as material succession.
Can I add on that real quick?
Yeah,
I don't want to interrupt your flow, but I know what it's like to think that way because I was a Roman Catholic. I went from Calvinism to Catholicism, much like many of the people out there like Sam have. And one thing that I didn't understand until I got interested in Orthodoxy was the Orthodox view is not identical to the Roman Catholic view that there's all this validity of apostolic succession even outside of the church. And when you understand this point that, and it was actually St. Athanasius's letters that convinced me of this position, because when I first heard this, I thought it was Donatus, but then I realized, no, actually it doesn't make any sense to say that there is a succession of the apostles that is heretical. That doesn't make any sense. But that's what you have to say if you're an ex operato Roman Catholic Augustinian view here. And the Orthodox view is that no, if you lose the faith, the other mechanical stuff also doesn't matter. Now, the church can make determinations about how you're received into the church. That's a different issue. But you're not still the church without the faith. In other words, you would have to be saying that you can have heretical apostolic succession, and that makes no sense.
Exactly. It makes absolutely no sense. And that's actually going to lead into the example that I'm going to give. And this is directly tied to the Church of the East. And so if you're talking about apostolicity with regards to material succession and correct dogma, correct expression of the faith, so let's take Nestorius as the example. So by ecumenical council, by the Third Ecumenical Council, Nestorius was deposed, meaning that he was completely stripped of clerical status. He's not a bishop anymore. He has no clerical status whatsoever. And once that happened, there is no apostolicity to him. Okay, he is not a valid cleric. He cannot transmit apostolicity because apostolicity has to go through the clerical establishment. So any church that follows Nestorius or considers him a saint or venerates him or gives him a clerical status loses its apostolicity. Okay, this is a very important point that we see in the Fifth Ecumenical Council. Okay, you look at, I think it's Canon 11 and 12 of the 8th session of the Fifth Ecumenical Council. I made a community post on it. So why is this important? Because the Ecumenical Council, which apparently if Sam is part of the Roman Catholic Church, he has to hold to this Ecumenical Council. It clearly states you must anathematize Theodore of Mopsuestia and Nestorius. These are saints and they're venerated within the Church of the East. And if you do not anathematize them, then you yourself are also anathema. So that means you take yourself out of apostolicity, just the way the councils had deemed Nestorius to no longer hold apostolic succession. So if you don't anathematize him, you are anathema, meaning you're no longer apostolic. That's what the argument is. And it's that simple. And so you cannot argue for this apostolic church when you actually, if you're going to be a Roman Catholic and hold to these councils and these canons, and yet you're going to tell us that the church that doesn't anathematize these people are apostolic?
This is huge. Now, I want to back that up by pointing out that you have to understand, too, that Albrecht, Aiken, Voice of Reason, and I don't know if Albrecht has shifted his position on this or what, but they have all, and Sam as well, basically said in various ways and phrases, Ephesus actually got it wrong when they condemned Nestorius because, quote, Nestorius wasn't a Nestorian. Now, this is so stupid because it shows no familiarity with the actual documents of Ephesus, because if you read the anathemas are actually directed at Nestorius. In other words, this would mean that all the anathemas of Ephesus are also wrong because they're misattributing a position that Nestorius claims to have. And it would mean that Nestorius was not defrocked and did not lose his apostolicity. But that's literally, and I've played this clip many times, Voice of Reason, Aiken, all these guys say that, no, Nestorius wasn't a Nestorian. And it's not just a denial of Ephesus, and it's fundamental to Ephesus that it's Nestorius that's right. You have to believe that Cyril correctly understood Nestorius's position as a dual subject Christology.
Yeah.
So to say that Nestorius wasn't a Nestorian means that Ephesus was theologically wrong as well.
Yeah. And to actually add to that point, I think it's in Pope Celestine's letter to Nestorius. I read it, a part of it way back when I was doing my streams on the Church of the East, but I think it's Pope Celestine's letter. He even says, he's like explicitly saying, he's like, there's no room for misunderstanding what you believe, Nestorius, because we have your writings in your own hand. So it's like, it's not like a game of telephone, or a misrepresentation. They had Nestorius's own writings that they were consulting and reading and making their judgments on. So there's that point. The other point was there was the double apostolicity charge against Nestorius, meaning that it was both the See of Rome and the See of Alexandria that found fault with Nestorius. So it's not just a misreading of him. It is like the sees themselves are saying, Nestorius, you are wrong. And in the letter, it basically says that Nestorius must confess the faith as Saint Cyril lays it out.
Yes, and by extension, the Fifth Council would also be wrong.
Exactly. So these people who are trying to say the ecumenical councils got it wrong, I think they are just a little bit ignorant of their theology and the councils.
Well, let me read from your post. This is 2 weeks ago. Shamoun will not condemn the Nestorian Church of the East, which venerates Theodore of Mopsuestia and Nestorius. Instead, Sam preaches that the Nestorian Assyrian Church of the East has a valid apostolic succession and thus is a vehicle of salvation. However, the Fifth Ecumenical Council, which is the reinterpretation of Chalcedon in a Cyrillian way, if we understand that, then we understand that it's just as important as Ephesus and Chalcedon. It reads, quote, the Fifth Ecumenical Council states in the canons of the 8th session, if anyone does not anathematize Nestorius, let him be anathema. If anyone defends the impious Theodore of Mopsuestia, and he does not anathematize him, let him be anathema. And that's from Richard Price, and that's pages 123 to 25 of Constantinople 553.
Yeah, the second volume specifically. So I've got it like right here, right there. Pick it up, go and read it. Sam, if you are serious about wanting to learn,
well, in my experience, all of these Roman Catholic apologists, they don't care. They don't care what Ephesus says. They don't care what the Fifth Council reaffirms. They just hand wave it. I don't care.
Hand wave it. Okay, well, if you want to hand wave it, then you have a church without ecumenical councils. I mean,
well, it's Protestant, isn't it?
Exactly. So based on that argument, that argument alone demonstrates that Sam's whole apostolic Christianity is it's nonsensical and it's heretical, because to preach a church that the ecumenical as canonical, that an ecumenical council has said cannot be canonical, that is heresy. That is outright heresy. You are preaching heresy at this point. Okay? So another thing that you can also look at is this whole idea of participation within non-Orthodox churches and the participation of non-Orthodox when they come to Orthodox churches. So non-Orthodox are not allowed in the altar area of an Orthodox church. Now, if you're not Orthodox and you're apostolic, why would you not be allowed to go into the altar area? You're not allowed to go into the altar area because you're not Orthodox. You are not apostolic. And priests within Orthodoxy, they're forbidden on principle, though I know we have certain hierarchs that err in this regard because they're ecumenist, but on principle, Orthodox priests are forbidden to concelebrate with non-Orthodox. You cannot do that. And the reason why you don't do that is because those are not apostolic clergy. You cannot be celebrating a divine mystery with somebody who is not a member of the body. You cannot do that. Okay? So basically what Sam is doing with his notion of apostolic Christianity is that he's using his orb magic to just in his head put whatever standards he wants to call something apostolic. Okay? And it's contrary to what the ecumenical councils teach. But now this leads us into this whole Protestant mindset idea, where I'm going to ask you, Sam, who gave you the authority to set the standards of what constitutes apostolic? Okay, are you just making it up in your own head and saying, oh, if you satisfy this threshold that I'm instituting, it's apostolic? It's like you saying, oh, as long as you confess the Trinity, you're okay. You can be a social Trinitarian, you can be a relative identity Trinitarian, you can be a monarchical Trinitarian, doesn't matter. I'm going to set the bar and say, as long as you confess the Trinity, you're a Christian. Well, I'm sorry, Sam, it doesn't work like that. All right? We don't have multiple conceptions of the Trinity. We have the Trinity as it is taught by the church.
And the only teaching of grace is uncreated grace and participation in the divine energies. That's the only one. There are not a bunch of different schools of theology on what grace is. The Orthodox Church is the only one that has always confessed the same theology of grace that the Cappadocians teach, that Palamas teaches, that Maximus teaches, and that's uncreated energy.
Yeah. So it's basically, it's coming to this argument that is, you are not in a position, Sam, to set the standards of what people need to believe in order to be part of the body of Christ, or to be a member of the church, or to be called a Christian. The church and the councils have made it clear what you need to believe and what you need to profess in order to satisfy the burden. Okay? And your criteria does not satisfy this burden. It is just something you're creating in your head. And just if anybody critiques you or challenges you on it, you just cuss them out and you think that they're an agent of Satan and that they're manifesting. And it's like, no, dude, you're the one manifesting. You're living in your head and you want people to live in your head as well. You're completely disregarding what the church and the councils have taught. And you're doing that out of ignorance. You are not knowledgeable on the patristics. You go to William Albrecht. You think this guy is a fount of knowledge? He is not a fount of knowledge. If he wants to debate me, I'll easily show just how ignorant he is of the councils and what the church teaches. Sure, let's do it. Set it up. But the point here is that you are acting as your own arbiter. Okay, you're using your own measuring stick. That is textbook demonic. That means you are not following the church. You are following your own pride. And you cannot set your pride aside and actually take instruction and follow what the church teaches. You want to invent your own apostolic Christian nonsense. Okay? It doesn't work like that. You have to follow the apostolic church as it itself has defined what you need to do in order to follow it. And now that's going to lead me into the next point. And this next point, this is probably going to get quite a few people upset, but you need to hear the truth. And the truth is, who is a Christian? Let's answer this question. And when we ask the question, who is a Christian? Well, what do we mean by that term Christian? Because you can understand it in many different ways. Historically, the way that the church has defined who is a Christian and who is rightfully to use that appellation is those who can canonically receive the Holy Eucharist within the Orthodox Church. Otherwise, the person is not a Christian. The whole point of living a Christian life, the whole point of going to church is to partake of the Holy Eucharist. As Christ says, you must partake of the body and blood to have life in you. So to have life, you must partake of the Holy Eucharist. So to be a Christian is somebody who does this. And the only place you can do that is within the Orthodox Church. And if you are permitted canonically to do that, you are a Christian. Otherwise, according to the church's own standards, you are not. Now, catechumens and those under a penance or in a state of impurity who cannot receive the Holy Eucharist are in a special category. Okay, and should they repose in such a state, they will be buried as Orthodox Christians. But otherwise, everybody else, they are not to be considered Christians. Okay? Now, we will use the term Christian in a loose sense when referring to those who self-identify as a Christian, and it's just shorthand label to say, oh, Christian, but not Muslim, Christian, but not Jew. So it's used kind of as a marker that sets people apart from everybody else, but we're looking under this term, Christian, to see basically what are some of the things, the core beliefs that people have, but then we will identify where the errors are with regards to the so-called denominations. But just because we may use that term loosely, Christian, to identify people, it doesn't necessarily mean that we equate them as Christians in the truest sense of the word. Okay? The patristic understanding of Christian is strictly referring to those who can canonically receive the Holy Eucharist within the Orthodox Church. And if that is the view, if that is the way the church functioned, then so much more is the whole idea of apostolicity. That's exactly how we have the Apostolic Church. And how do you identify what is the Apostolic Church? It's those that are in communion with each other. So you can have the churches in various different countries around the world, and what unites them in apostolicity is the fact that they are in communion, and they're not excommunicated, as Jay would say. They are in communion. They are participating in the body and blood of Christ, and it's 2 Peter 1:4, participating in the divine energies of Christ, participating in Christ. So that is your whole apostolic tradition summed up in the Christian expression of orthodoxy.
It'd be interesting too to point out the ahistorical element of this. Who prior to Shamoun, Albrecht, Aiken, Voice of Reason, I don't know who has ever argued that the Catholic Church is the listing of the people who claim to have apostolic succession? Whoever taught this? Can anybody cite anyone prior to Sam Shamoun or Aiken or whoever that taught this? Like, it's a new ecclesiological doctrine. I mean, the doctrine of ecclesiology itself is not something that we craft on our own, right? It's something that is part of the tradition that's handed down. You can't make up a new ecclesiology. It has to be consonant with Christology, because Christology will reflect into ecclesiology, because the church is the body of Christ. And if you have right Christology, you're going to have right ecclesiology. And it's precisely erroneous Christology which these people are defending in terms of the Church of the East and the Coptics, and arguably even Roman Catholicism, which is why they don't have correct ecclesiology.
Yep. Another point that I guess I can make, and this is one that I made a community post on, It's also, you look at the mentality of the Orthodox in having this understanding of who is a Christian, and the apostolic question is, when somebody from a different quote unquote Christian profession comes to the Orthodox Church, what they have to renounce. And so, for example, like if you're a former Roman Catholic coming,
you have a renunciation.
You have a renunciation. If you are coming from the Church of the East, you have a renunciation. If you are coming from one of the Oriental establishments, you have a renunciation. And these are explicit. These are explicit renunciations that you have to say that these establishments, Roman Catholicism, Orientals, Church of these, are incorrect. They are not the body and blood of Christ. They are not the church. You do not have valid sacraments, if you will, or we would prefer the term mysteries. We don't really use sacraments. We'll call it as mysteries, that those are not present in those churches. And you have to renounce them. You cannot be Orthodox and not renounce those churches. You have to. Now, if you are an Orthodox who is a fan of Sam, and you are saying, well, I'm not of that persuasion and whatnot, you just don't know what your faith teaches. You don't know what Orthodoxy teaches. You have to take this hard line, because we don't compromise on the faith. You cannot be Orthodox and not renounce these other churches. If you don't want to go out and bash them, okay, Sam said, oh, I will never bash these churches. Okay, don't bash them. You don't have to go and assault them, but you have to renounce them. And you have to have that personal conviction that these are false churches and they do not have the mysteries. Because if they had the mysteries, then you wouldn't have to renounce them. It doesn't make sense to renounce Christ if he is over there. You're renouncing them because you're saying Christ is not there. Christ is here. And if I come here, I will participate in the divine mystery that is Christ. That's the whole point. There's only that one ark of salvation. Noah was commanded to build one ark, not a gazillion arks. One ark, and that's the ark that you come aboard. And now maybe we can make a point here, because I think a lot of people may not understand when you say, Jay, or others will say that this Nestorian ecclesiology, and what exactly does that mean? I don't know if you want to elaborate on that.
Yeah, just I'll explain briefly that, in the notion of, is there a bit of an echo? Or no, it's good now. Never mind. So basically, in church history, you have the division at Ephesus between Notorious and the rest of the church over the question of whether Christ is a dual subject or a single subject. If you believe the writings of St. Cyril of Alexandria, and if you believe the teaching of Ephesus, and if people that are not familiar with it, I would say start by reading something simple like On the Unity of Christ by St. Cyril. You're going to notice that Cyril correctly identifies Nestorius as having a dual subject Christology, that there's this Jesus the man who's a subject, who's the agent behind all the human actions like eating and crying and all this kind of stuff. And then there's a divine person, the Logos, who's the one that kind of peeps through when there's miracles or when there's an ascension or something like this. So there's two subjects. And this principle in Christology gets applied the same way to the mystical body, which is the church, when you have a Nestorian ecclesiology where Christ is not identical to the visible body in the same way that he was identically united to his visible physical body when he was incarnate. Let me bring Kai back. Are you there?
Yeah,
I lost you for a second. So basically, just as Nestorius would divide the incarnation and the hypostatic union, likewise in the church you have an ecclesiological version of Nestorianism where Christ is not synonymous with his mystical body, the visible single body church, but rather amongst a bunch of different sects and groups. And this, although not explicitly called the invisible church doctrine, in the Reformation becomes Calvin's invisible church doctrine. Calvin teaches that there is a visible church which is splintered and split and divided, and everybody hates each other, and they're all excommunicating each other. Roman Catholic, Lutheran, Calvinist, Presbyterian, it's Methodist. And then there is a elect church that is the true believing elect amongst these groups, right? That's the kind of classical Calvinist Westminster Confession view. Visible, invisible church. It's premised on a Nestorian ecclesiology. The same principles that Nestorius applies to Christ, these people apply to the mystical body of Christ, the church. And so they deny a single visible, substantial, right, in time and space history, single visible church. And that's exactly the same position that Sam, Albrecht, and the Vatican II ecumenist mindset has.
Yeah. Yeah, thanks for that, Jay. You explained it much better than I would be able to. The other thing that I wanted to touch upon, and this is kind of like the last thing that I really had in my notes to talk about. We can talk about other things if you have anything else, Jay, but the other thing that I really wanted to highlight to people is this orb nonsense with
this
Sam.
is relevant because charismaticism is a huge part of this picture here, because Roman Catholicism officially accepts charismaticism.
Yeah. So Sam kind of seems to be backtracking a bit with regards to saying that the whole things with the orbs is a joke, whatever. Those who have known Sam, who have followed Sam for a while, they know that he was serious. He really did think these orbs are something miraculous, some kind of confirmation of his teaching, of his position in things. But patristically, Sam would be, and I don't say this lightly, but it is very much the case. The patristic sources would really basically say that Sam is under demonic influence, and especially if he is giving credence to these things, there's a problem. There's a serious spiritual problem going on with Sam. He has made remarks to the effect that he knows that signs can come that are from Satan. So he is aware of it, but if he is like allowing it to permeate his thinking that something special is actually going on, then those of you who are listening to Sam and just gobbling up all the ecumenist garbage that he's putting out, this is basically demonic influence. If you pick up, this is the third volume in the Philokalia, okay, and I made the community post about that. And patristically, I'm just going to read this short little paragraph just so that you guys are aware whenever you hear Sam talking about these orbs. Now, if he doesn't preface it with say, oh guys, this is a joke, look at this orb, and he's just basically saying it the way he does on stream, makes it sound serious, people can misinterpret that and actually think him being very serious. But me personally, knowing Sam and having interacted with him, I do think he believes these orbs are miraculous.
I put a clip that I clipped where he's being very serious.
Very serious about it. Yeah. So the particular part is, it's from St. Peter of Damascus, and it's in his book 1, A Treasury of Divine Knowledge, and it's in the recorded in the Philokalia. And this is what he writes. He says, when the devil saw Christ descending in his extreme goodness to the holy martyrs and revered fathers, appearing either in himself or through angels or in some other ineffable form, he began to fabricate numerous delusions in order to destroy people. It is on account of this that the fathers, in their discrimination, wrote that one should not pay any attention to such diabolic manifestations, whether they come through images, or light, or fire, or some other deceptive form. For the devil can deceive even in sleep or through the senses. If we accept such delusions, he makes the intellect and its utter ignorance and self-conceit depict various shapes or colors, so that we think that this is a manifestation of God or of an angel, Often in sleep or to our senses when awake, he shows us demons that are apparently defeated. In short, he does all he can to destroy us by making us succumb to these delusions. So that's patristic. That's orthodoxy. That is what the Orthodox teach. And basically, if you believe this, Sam, you would be considered to be demonically influenced. And people, you guys listening to this stream, you can go and watch Sam. You can go and see for yourself the way he talks about these things, and you can clearly make your own judgments in that regard. But I think you will see that, coupled with his mental state, you guys can see that this person is unhinged. He is not well. He is not well spiritually. And though he does say that he goes and takes communion at the Roman Catholic Church, you can see that that communion is not having any effect on him. It is not helping him spiritually. It's making him even more deluded. He talks about his numbers, how his ministry is growing. It's basically, he is seeing a lot of demonic stuff come his way as an affirmation that he's speaking the truth and bringing people to Christ. Whereas if you're not bringing people to orthodoxy, then you're not bringing people to Christ. And though some people will find their way to orthodoxy through Sam, the Holy Spirit has its way of working through people. So that's not to validate Sam as being of the Holy Spirit. It is the Holy Spirit guiding people despite Sam. And so he does not necessarily need to be understood as a vessel to bring people to orthodoxy, because of the amount of people that he's actually diverting away from orthodoxy and encouraging to go and adopt heresy. The Holy Spirit is not going to promote somebody to go into a heretical church and go to where the divine mystery of Christ is not present. Okay, the Holy Spirit is not going to do that. So you have to look at Sam's initiatives. Do they line up with orthodoxy? And if they don't, then they have to be demonically influenced.
Yeah, absolutely. And I want to remind people, too, that just the Roman Catholic Church's position on acceptance from the papacy down in the last 30, 40 years of the charismatic movement and the so-called charismatic renewal, which is what they call it, that is another defeater for the position. If the papacy is there to guide us and show us the truth, lead us into the true faith, preserve the true faith, keep us in unity, etc., why would they accept something that already was condemned in the early church when the Montanists were condemned? Modern day charismaticism and all of its manifestations is literally a repeat of the Montanist heresy. And if you want my longer breakdown, we did a 6-hour talk where we had charismatics calling in. And it doesn't matter whether it's evangelical, Pentecostal, or Roman Catholic charismatic. This is a defeater for the position. If you read Father Seraphim Rose's book, Orthodoxy and the Religion and Future, same critique of charismaticism and the delusion that it promotes. So this applies to Taylor Marshall as well, because Taylor Marshall has all the same mystical delusions that he talks about with blessed Anna Taigi in the days of judgment and black darkness that are coming, all this nonsense that he's been pushing since 2020. Same goes for the trad cats. They're all charismatics, and charismaticism is delusion. Now, we do have some super chats if you guys want to support the stream. I will also be supporting Kai as well. You can send super chats, and I'll split those with Kai. We have first one is Sneed, Chucks, and $5. If Sam's position is that all the apostolic churches are the body of Christ, and each one declares the other heretical, that means the entire body of Christ is wrong. Yeah, you could take the argument that way, right? Because if they're all disagreeing, then they're all wrong. None of them are right. And I think that's actually correct in terms of what Kai said at the beginning about ecumenism. Ecumenism is premised on the idea that there's not a true church. We're all in the process of finding the church. The church is something that's discovered at the end of history after we all, admit that we're all wrong and nobody has it right. We'll eschatologically find the true church. That's the presupposition of ecumenism. Hauling the Goods, $50. I appreciate both of you guys and Perry Robinson. You helped me get out of Protestantism. Now, I'm hopefully becoming a catechumen and will be baptized into the Serbian Orthodox Church. God bless you both. I have to correct you. Kai is not actually Serbian. He's Orbian. And Kai joined the Orbian Orthodox Church. Actually, somebody beat me to this joke. Cards, I promise I did not read Cards' super chat. He says, repent and become Orbian Orthodox. Exactly. Cards read my mind. Nick, $5. Sam will pin Muslims playing a pick and choose game in their Islamic texts and theology. But then he does the same thing when he's presented with problem texts in Roman Catholic contradictions. I assume you mean Nostra Aetate 3 and Lumen Gentium 16, the way that it speaks of Muslims having the faith of Abraham and adoring the one God. TL Chiotoli, $10. Thank you so much, TL. Remember, guys, if you want to support, you can support by sending a super chat, and it goes to Kai as well. We got new members with winter meat. Eyes are the leather strap of the anus, $5. That's from the Hadiths, I think, if I recall. This is a little bit off topic, but how does one join your Discord? I don't run that Discord. It's run by David and FDA and the mods in there. I think if you just search for Orthodox Discord, it's the biggest one. So you should be able to join that way. Or DM Chase Haggard, and he can give you the link on Twitter. Zen Razor became a member. Let's see. Guys, I have Kai linked in the chat. You can head on over to Orthodox Shahada and follow Kai. Be sure to support him. And be sure and muzzle and bark. Kai, you need to be muzzled and you need to stop barking because you're manifesting. I'm just using this is like the classic terminology that we hear from. There's the link, by the way, for people in the chat.
Bring it.
So, also, will there be a debate with the Orientals? Look, guys, David debated all the Orientals like 5 years ago. You can go to David's channel. He has a whole playlist where he debates with all those guys, and we're not going to repeat the debates. We're going to do another installment of the critiquing the Orientals. Kai, could you give us an update on what the next in that series is going to be?
Oh, it's been a while since I looked at it. I think what I had lined up is we're going to look at what composite hypostasis means, the composite language when it's applied to Christ. How do we understand that? What is actually composite? And also start looking at the essence energies. What exactly is the energies doctrine? Why is it relevant? Why is it central to Christology? Because a lot of people don't actually understand its Christological impacts. They will see the essence energies distinction as really more of just kind of the way God interacts with creation, if you will, in a very kind of limited scope of understanding the essence energies doctrine, but it has very massive implications on a Christological level for the person of Christ, and it ties into the whole composite Christ question. So that's, I think, what I have lined up for the next installment.
Yeah. Also, I would say that for those that are interested, if you want to read more on it, the discussion of composite hypostasis towards in the Edict of Justinian is really good in the Vesha book. So everybody should get on the person of Christ if you want to go deeper into the theology of the Fifth Council. Fodio's $5. Go ahead.
Well, I was going to say that book, it's a standard. That is a very, very, very good book. I recommend everybody to read that, On the Person of Christ. That is just, it's on my top 10. It'll probably always be on my top 10. You have to read it. And it's very interesting how even St. Justinian, he points out the same problem that we have with the Orientals today. He's pointing it out. It's like these people are just incapable of reading context. They're just word concept fallacy over and over and over again. St. Justinian points that out, and we're pointing that out today. But just as a comment with regards to the debating of the Orientals,
welcome everyone.
That may be on the table. I don't want to completely take that off of the table. What I'm not doing is I'm not going to play their games and do it on their time frame. I'm going to take the time to do the series It may take us a year, 2 years, I don't know, however long. We have a lot of parts. We have a lot of material to cover. We're going to be very extensive and exhaustive in this treatment. And so we'll see how the Oriental community responds to all of this, and whether or not a final debate will materialize. I'm not fearful to debate them. It's really more of a waste of my time right now, because when you engage these people, it's not a proper debate. It's about really demonstrating how they fall into word concept fallacy. And so that's what it is, over and over and over again, just trying to get these people to understand concepts, context, where they're making the mistakes. So it's not even a debate. It's more of like an education session. So I want to really take the time to demonstrate and to develop with UJ and with David the paradigms. So the Orthodox paradigm, the Oriental paradigm, the Nestorian paradigm, so that people stop just looking at quotes and think they understand the theology behind these words that they're reading. They have to start understanding in paradigms, how you're framing what a particular father is saying within the respective paradigm. And now you're going to put the sayings of Saint Cyril in the Orthodox paradigm and in the Oriental paradigm, and you're going to see which of these two paradigms actually makes sense of what Saint Cyril is saying. We're going to look at what is the paradigm that the Council of Chalcedon worked under, what was the paradigm of the Fifth Ecumenical Council, and so on. And that's how we're going to unfold this. So the audience needs to be educated generally in paradigmatic ways of thinking, so that should a debate in the future actually materialize, that they actually can be able to follow along a paradigmatic level debate. It's not going to be a quote mine debate. And this is exactly what these Orientals want. They want a quote mine war. They just want to throw quotes at you. Look at, this is what these fathers have said. That's not what the debate is going to be. You guys are not at the level yet to debate at paradigms. So we're going to set out all of the paradigms, so that should this debate happen, we're going to demonstrate that you guys don't even know how to think in paradigms, that you don't even know what your paradigms are, so you don't even know how to process what these fathers are thinking. It goes beyond just simple quote mining. Okay, don't be so eager for debate. It will be your downfall. Okay, just stop with the taunting and have a little bit of patience. Watch the series. Continue to do your refutation series. I don't really care about that. You guys can just go and just circle jerk yourselves. You think that you are refuting us. That's fine. You guys keep doing that. But hopefully, maybe after the 10-part series is done, you might actually have learned something beyond just doing keyword searches. All right. So just don't be so eager for a debate.
By the way, so I've got multiple times the link right here for David's debates that have already, look, we've already had these debates. All right, this guy's getting on my nerves. I'm just done with it. All these debates have been had 5 years ago. The people that are debating the same stuff now are not bringing anything new to the table. Severin Zealot said all the same stuff 5 years ago to David. And nobody wants to go listen to this. Nobody wants to hear the same debate over and over and over. All you guys want is attention to grow your channels, and that's why we're not going to give it to you. However, Kai is probably open to eventually doing debates. At least that's what he seems to be saying. Yako says to you, Kai, for $7.99, Daniel Kakish wants a debate with Kai on Ibis's letter to Mari and Theodoret not repenting at Chalcedon. And he wants to talk about Ephesus and the apparitions.
Kakish is not worth my time. This guy, I have talked with him behind the scenes. I have been on friendly terms with him up to a point for quite some time. He is not theologically literate. Okay. He approaches.
Didn't he already debate David?
I don't know if Kakish did. Maybe he did. I don't really.
Or maybe he was just there in the debate.
or maybe he was just there. I don't know. But Kakash will openly admit that he approaches things from a historical point of view. He wants to look at things historically. Okay. That is not really my avenue. That is not where I look with regards to my argumentations, with regards to understanding Orthodox theology, Oriental, Nestorian. I look at theology, I look at metaphysics, I look at the councils, what do they teach, I look at paradigms. I'm not going to go on a back and forth on historical documents. He can go and debate somebody else on that, but I'm just not interested in that. Kakash, you know I'm not scared of you, bro. Don't play these games. Come, if you want to debate theology, you know that you don't know theology. Okay. And you know that I would embarrass you on that. So if you want a theological debate, and I know that you don't waste my time with stuff that you know that I don't bother reading, and I don't really bother on those details. Those are not the issues that are at my forefront. I deal with other issues. So don't be throwing out challenges that you know I don't specialize in a particular area, just how I'm not challenging you to a theological debate because I know you are very poor in theology. That is not your strength. Just like you said on stream, you don't do metaphysics, you're Syriac, you write poetry. All right. I know that's not your strength. I'm not going to call you out on that. So don't try to do this one up. It's not going to work.
Gainer Zola, $5. The Christian worship in the Old Testament video on Orthodox Shahada helped me leave Protestantism. Thank you for your work. Thank you, Jay, for the suggestion. Hey, man, that's great to hear you. It's a classic, excellent documentary that they put together. Cody G, $20. This is a fantastic discussion, fantastic guest. Jay, thank you. It would be great to have Kai on to respond to common quote arguments that you get a day or so after your debate live streams. I'm not sure what you mean, but thank you for the super chat. I first heard Orthodoxy because of your channel. Glory to God. Thank you. Now, again, to people that are asking, I'm putting in the chat right here David's entire playlist. And I guarantee you, and I can tell you, the Orientals are not bringing anything new to the table. All of these debates were already had, the exact same stupid quote mine debates 5 years ago. So you can go watch David's playlist and you can have your hearts fill your heart with all the Oriental debates that you want from 5 years ago. There's nothing new that they're presenting or bringing to the table. And there you go. There's David has, I don't know how many, plenty of videos in this playlist. Let's see how many he's got. Oriental Orthodoxy Refuted. 14 videos right there, including... does he have debates in this one? You can go, let's see. Go watch his Severin Zealot debate. And I think he debated Daniel Kakish too. So you can go watch those debates from David. And people say, "Oh, you're just talking about the Church of the East. You haven't refuted anybody in your series." This series is ongoing. Kai's number one focus in his life is not replying to every idiot Oriental on the internet. He went and got married because he actually is a normal human being with a life. He's not, and that's right. Like what Orientals are saying on the internet is not Kai's number one thing. You will get your day. We will get to you eventually. I promise you. Orthodox Roy per five. Go ahead.
Yeah. So the thing here is just to address the point in terms of why talking about the Church of the East and Nestorianism is actually very important to the Orientals, is that people don't really understand. I tried to talk about it in the streams that we already did. I hinted at it, but a lot of people don't understand, and even the Orientals themselves don't understand. A lot of the criticism that we level at Nestorians is actually also that is leveled at the Orientals. They are Nestorians in a different way. They're just making some slight metaphysical different move than the Nestorians, but they both basically have the same starting point. And that is not the starting point that Orthodoxy has. Okay. Orthodoxy starting point is very different, but the Orientals and the Nestorians, they both share a common starting point, and then they just go in separate ways. So understanding the Nestorian mistake is actually going to help you better understand the Oriental mistake. And then when we see how Saint Cyril is criticizing the Nestorians, that is going to elucidate that Nestorian position a lot more. And then we see the metaphysical mistakes that the Orientals then take and apply to Saint Cyril that basically makes them Nestorian. So that's why I'm focusing on that. But the Orientals are too low IQ to understand that, and that's why they keep harping about, oh, you're not really refuting the Orientals, you're just talking about Nestorians. Yeah, just you'll have your day. Don't worry about that.
Yeah, it's you need to understand the two extremes. That's the whole point here. Orb Maxer 6900. You can't spell Chi without a win, without the W, in other words, the win, and if you know this. Orthodox Groiper, $5. I found my way to Orthodoxy through Sam, and then I wrote a song about him to thank him, LOL. Yes, I played that piano ditty. It was very well crafted and very entertaining. A nice jazz ditty that you put together, which was pretty funny. Thank you. Thank you, Orthodox Groiper. Appreciate that. All right, guys, be sure and head on over to chalk.com. Use promo code JAY40 to get 40% off all those great products at CHOQ.com, chalk.com, as well as a promo code JAY44LIFE, J44Life to get 44% off. You can unsubscribe at any time. The best in supplementation on the internet to add to a healthy diet to make sure that you are actually becoming toxically masculine. Kai, anything you want to leave us with before we go?
Yeah, I would just say go and check out The Orthodox Church and Ecumenism by St. Justin Popovich. Sorry, I don't have a physical copy of it. I have
it over here. It's a good book.
Yeah, that's a good introduction for those of you who want to know the basic ideas of ecumenism, why we're against it, how to identify it. That's a very good introduction, and I would say for people to check that out. And then when you see that, when you read that, you will then clearly see what Sam is trying to accomplish.